Hello everyone, how are you doing?
Hi there.
My name's Craig. Strategy. Is that why you came? Because I said strategy? Is that the word, or was it AI? Which of those two words got you interested? AI. All right, cool. So I'm going to ask questions more than I'm going to say things, right? And so interact with the people next to you. It'll be a whole bunch of turn to the person next to you and have a couple of moments on this topic and that topic and this topic. It's a bit of a sense-making thing. We're in a time of change. And so how are we going to deal with that time of change? Before I get into the details of it, I want to share a story from something that happened to me earlier in my career, in probably 20-ish years ago right now. In the banks, they were all re-platforming and reworking their mortgage workflows. And I was hired to be a project manager at ANZ Bank to be a guy who sat on one of their projects, and I delivered that. That project happened, that was fine. But because I was around and because they'd gotten to know me and they thought I was useful, they asked me to go hang out with those guys from Accenture. Anyone here from Accenture, Deloitte, Bain, etc.? Usually I like to shit on those guys, but not in this instance. It's, they were there to kind of talk about optimizing the business unit, right? So, the mortgage is part of ANZ. They were there. Let's reinvent it. Like, let's reimagine what, home loan banking could be. And they did a whole bunch of research. Those consultants, they fuck around and like create these overly complicated slide decks and, all the bullshit that they do, right? I learned from it. It was really interesting and useful for me. And it's helped me in my career in terms of complex stakeholder management and, when's the right time to pull out the slide deck with 408 things on it versus the simpler version of communication, because it is actually useful in some places and times. But what I did is I followed these guys around, and I was hired by ANZ to be the guy who represents ANZ's interests and make sure that Accenture don't pull the wool over their eyes. So I finished that project, did that for a few months, and then St George Bank rang me, and they asked me to do the same thing for a consulting team that was coming into their bank to look at their mortgage processes. Guess what? It was the same 4 people from Accenture. Then I went to Westpac, same thing again, right? And so I kind of bounced around a couple of different banks and had this experience where I was the kind of the trusted advisor for the bank because, people referred me in and so forth. But I was working with this Accenture team and it was cool, like they did their thing. What I noticed though is they would make recommendations, which I was a true believer in. They were like, this is 2004, 5, 6 territory. And they were saying things like small cross-functional modular teams for your workflow, not for software development, but for like, mortgage approvals. That pod of people are going to take my mortgage application. They're going to be able to handle it end to end. And while busyness will go down because there'll be slack times and stuff like that that people have, they'll actually complete the work more efficiently. And they had all these case studies from banks in Europe and Asia and stuff like that, where they were the challenger banks and they do stuff like this and they would like, 4x their kind of productivity and increase their customer satisfaction. And, we've been through the agile transformation. It's all the same stories, right? But applied to processing work in banks. Time and time again, the banks refused to adopt these recommendations. I thought that was really interesting. So I talked to the Accenture guys over dinner one night and they said, it's always like this, right? No one wants to change, right? They're too busy. They're too locked into their existing power dynamics. They're too locked into the way they work today. And it's too much effort to change because it takes years to drive change into culture and behaviors in organizations. And those guys just want to get their next promotion and move on to the next bank and change their job in 2 years' time. And they don't want to stick around for it. So while we're giving them the best advice we can, we know they're not going to take it. And then a couple of weeks ago, skipping forward to 2025, I was reading that MIT paper. How many of you saw it? It's like every AI initiative doesn't give a return on investment. There was a bit of splash of news about it. Half of you are kind of nodding along. It was like, why is it? So, you dig into it and you kind of look at some other sources and it's like, what do you think is stopping people from pulling return on investment out of these AI projects? The story before is a bit of a cue. Anyone want to venture? Has anyone been part of those projects where you've tried to do a thing and it's just, The what? The people at the top. What specifically do they do? They don't change. They don't enable change, right? You want to do your little AI project, you can kind of smash out a good looking project in days now, let alone weeks. And you're ready to put it into production, but you've got some change process that could take up to 9 months before you can actually see the light of day. Is that the vibe? How many of you guys work in product companies? How many work in corporate? Yeah. So when I say, is that the vibe? All the corporate people are supposed to go, yeah, I recognize what you're saying. So I've just been thinking about it's human, the way we adopt these new technologies, the bottleneck is the humans, right? How we as people come together and figure our stuff out. I have notes to kind of keep myself on track, but that's a bit of the theme. I'm going to ask you guys some questions. I'm going to need, I need glasses and I need interaction. So roll with me here. The first one is just want to get 3 or 4 examples. What's the raddest, coolest thing you've done with AI, you personally? What's something you've gone, holy shit, that was awesome? Anyone? Images with Midjourney. Yeah, yeah. And then you just fall in love with it and you sit there for the next 2 hours just going, and one more, and then you go home and you do it more. Yeah, I've been there. Anyone else? Yes?
I made a pet rock simulator that would use generative infill. So you'd have a rock and then you'd say with my, oh, do I need it? Yeah. Oh, okay.
They're recording the session. Yeah.
Sorry, I'll start again.
Yeah.
I made a pet rock simulator where you have a rock and then it's got a generative infill, so you can say, I want to take my rock to the beach, and then the rock is filled in the beach. And so it's just a fun way of simulating having a pet rock.
That sounds fun.
Yeah, it was great.
Yeah, awesome. I'll come back.
No one paid me for
it.
it.
Over this side. Yes, Steve? Oh, I should have gone to you after all. All right.
Actually, it's not that special in a way that everyone knows you can take a photo and you can ask Google or any of the tools to, what can I make with everything in my fridge? But it was the act that I did it in front of my parents who didn't know what AI was. Open fridge, take photo, ask what can I make with this? And it could just list stuff off. Watching their faces blew their minds about what was possible.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. I have an anecdote on that while we take the mic back over that side. On Saturday, I was sitting in my backyard looking at I was kneeling in my backyard looking at the weeds because I'm of a certain age now where gardening is a thing. And I'm looking at the weeds and I'm overwhelmed because they're just coming and coming and coming, right? And I'm like, fuck this. And I stood up with my camera and I took a photo of this portion, this little rock garden, and I took a photo of it with all the grasses and the weeds kind of getting in the way. And I asked ChatGPT, what the hell can I do about this? And it said to me, take a wider shot photo and I'll give you a better answer. So I stepped a few paces back and I took a wider shot photo, and then it came back and it said, get yourself a heavy duty flamethrower. And it gave that recommendation on the back of past interactions and conversations that I've had. But I just went, holy cow, what a great solution, right? Once upon a time, you would have been building SaaS apps to solve that stuff. They're gone, right? Yes, what was yours?
I love making Chrome plugins. So
Chrome plugins?
I made one that if you're reading an article about a music review or whatever, it'll identify the artist and the song, and then it'll just add it to use the Spotify API, add it to your playlist. And then I made another one where when you're on Amazon, I've got a button that it sends an email or it requests to book at my local library.
Nice.
So
nice. Anyone else done Chrome plugins or similar? Just a bit of a show of hands, no? Yeah? Yeah. Not a Chrome plugin, but something similar? Grab the mic.
It's not a Chrome plugin, but it's for analyzing the user testings that we did.
Yeah.
It helps me to I was using ChatGPT, so I was using it as an agent. I kind of can converse with the ChatGPT, then to dig deeper into what is the user testings results and what people are saying about that. So yeah, not exactly about the plugin.
Yeah, but still, building tools and leveraging tools to do more. Is any other one last example from anyone? Yep. Here we go. Two last examples, and then I'll move on.
Yeah, I had this idea for a long time that I wanted to create a book for my daughter, telling the story about how it was to grow up in the 80s. And so I've used AI to do that. That was fun.
Yeah, nice. Creating a book. That's awesome.
Not very cool, but earlier this year, I was going on a flight to my cousin's wedding in Queensland. And about a week before, I started getting red spots, which traditionally doesn't really look like chickenpox, but I relied on Dr. ChatGPT just to do a little bit of analysis on these spots because I was hyper aware of getting sick because you can't travel with chickenpox, and my partner had just had shingles as well. So it really like pushed me to go to a doctor as well, because then I couldn't travel with chickenpox. So
yeah, well, it's super powerful. A paper came out in a medical journal just this last month that says patients that diagnose themselves with tools like ChatGPT and Google and stuff like that are more reliable than GPs. Just in case you're wondering. All right, doctors hate it, of course. I've got a brother-in-law who's a doctor, and he has a real kind of sardonic kind of drippiness whenever he talks about Dr. Google. He hates it. All right, cool. So that's the raddest tools you've used. I talked about taking the photo with ChatGPT. Everything's just freaking amazing. There is things like medical diagnosis, like, they do hallucinate, make mistakes and stuff like that. So it's not reliable, even though it's more reliable than a GP. So when we're doing like, corporate workflows and, financial transactions and stuff like that, we have to pay attention, but there's lots of things to do, lots of opportunity, but also like you guys, you're probably on average older than the average designer. And so you're thinking more strategically about product and strategy and business and stuff like that. And you're thinking about what's going to happen to the SaaS industry or the marketplaces as the LLMs kind of sweep through the world and solve all our problems. Is that right? I was asking you. Yeah. Cool. Yeah. It's going to come, right? Like the whole, once upon a time, like 2005 or 6 or something, like, the kind of the SaaS industry kind of locked in, and it was like, cool, I'll build once for everyone. And then everyone starts using that, whatever it is, SaaS tool that you got. And all of a sudden in 2027, let's say, it's going to be really easy for you to kind of bespoke build everything for yourself, right? And so everything that's not relying on some other person's specific IP is going to be simpler. And so that whole SaaS game is going to be disrupted radically. So, we've got to be resilient, and we've got to change, and we've got to be, on our toes continuously for the next 2 or 3 years while it all kind of shakes out. As a bunch of professionals of a certain type, right? Product designers, some of your product managers, stuff like that. What are you doing? I told you I was going to ask a lot of questions. What are you doing to augment your skills and practices? What tools are you using to make yourself more impactful?
So I'd say I'm using ChatGPT on a daily basis. I've got a GPT task set up that sends me news on Friday afternoon on the developing things that's happening in AI, using Cursor to sort of augment how I'm coding. Starting to push some of those features into the code base as well. So yeah, there's a couple of things.
Yeah. Have you always been contributing to the code base, or is that a new thing?
A little bit, yeah.
A little bit, yeah, cool. Has anyone else kind of gone from like hands off the code base to now I'm a contributor? No one? Has anyone thought about it? Yeah. So in the Everest team, like we started mucking around with the LLMs when ChatGPT first came out. Like we have business units specifically about launching new startups. So we take non-technical founders and help them get their first product out the door. So we've had to change that practice because at a certain time, like it was pretty much just kind of like tiny little waterfall, right? Like, 2 or 3 month thing, build a product and out it goes. Then they start trying to sell it to customers. But with the LLMs coming out, the investor ecosystem is all like, why is your URL not got AI at the end of it? Like, go make that happen. And so you had to kind of leverage those things. And the fastest way to get an AI product out is to kind of call on an API, right? And use that machine to kind of serve as part of your ecosystem. And so you build a product experience, what these characters are doing. And, the pejorative thing that people are describing these things is like, ChatGPT rappers, right? Which I think is, it's just that snarky pejorative stuff people do, right? Like there's tons of value in that if you can kind of execute it well. An experiment we did some work with Monash Uni a while back, and they had some researchers looking at, what was it? Like EEGs, right? To diagnose for epilepsy. And they had a machine model that they've been training since 2012 or 13 or something, and they've been kind of working, and they're constantly training the model and like working up the accuracy of the diagnosis. And then just for shits and giggles, we tested it against ChatGPT, and it got way up over 99% accuracy from their like 91 or 92% accuracy instantly, right? And so, again, the power of these things is amazing. we have to be aware of the risk and all that sort of stuff. But we got in there and we started having to build these products early. And so we kind of cycled through what does it mean, but it also made us really reflective about, so what does it mean for product strategy and what does it mean for making a good product? And that also made us reflect on how we make products. And so I'll kind of address both those things a little bit, but I'm going to kind of keep throwing back to you as well. What does it mean to make a good product? You really have to think about like what's the problem you're solving, and it's all the stuff that the UX industry or the product design industry and the agile people and whatever has been preaching for the last 20 years is true, just times 10, right? It's like even more important to kind of narrow in on something that matters to people and solve a problem for them, right? The thing that I kind of said in the written description of this talk is like, if everyone's got access to the same tools, if we can all go to ChatGPT and take a photo of our backyard, who needs gardening apps anymore, right? So if you're a gardening app, what are you going to do to stay relevant and become important in people's lives? What are the other things that you can wrap into that product experience that make it worth people sticking around? So we all ask those questions about all the things that we're working on. I seed you with that at the moment because I'm going to specifically ask you to think about that in a couple of minutes. The other thing we did is thinking about how do we work, right? So one thing is like now, instead of kind of doing that 2 or 3 month build thing, we do that when kind of a market has been identified and, validated that it's real and all that sort of stuff. But we're much more into this week, maybe spilling into next week, we'll build a prototype with Lovable or something like that and just get it out in front of people, right? And go sell the thing before you build it is the philosophy that we have now, right? So, you can kind of have these low code things. They're not good, they're not secure, they're not reliable. They've got lots of problems with them. They're going to get better. Like over the next 2-3 years, again, they're going to kind of really mature and everything's going to get better. But today, they're still kind of sketchy, right? But that doesn't matter because solving the business problem of like, is there a market there? Is it big enough for me to make a business of, right? You can start that process with these tools, right? You have to play around with them. Have any of you used any of the kind of AI low-code tools? Yeah? So when you first start using it, it's a real pain in the ass because it gives you shit results. And you're like, damn it. So then what did you do? What I did is I went back to ChatGPT and said, how can I best use Lovable? And it gave me tips and I got better at it. And so that experiment and feedback loop kind of really, really helped. All right, so back to product design or service design. The previous question was, what's the raddest tool you've ever used? What's the raddest thing you've ever done? The current question is, what's the raddest tool you've used so far? So you said ChatGPT and you've got some workflows built around with that. Has anyone got any other examples? Yep.
I have a personal story to share if you allow me a few minutes to share. I'm not going to take all your time at all.
Probably no. No,
Yeah.
I just want to keep the flow going.
Yeah,
so
that's
just
fine.
keep it to 30 seconds. We're good. Otherwise,
I don't know.
all right, we'll keep going.
All right.
Yeah. Anyone else? Yes.
I've used Replit.
Sorry, Replit.
Yeah, Replit.
And what has it done for you that's amazing?
So it does all the writes all the code, and I can deploy it on that website, their website. So if I'm communicating to the developers or managers, you can just deploy it and see. That's a proof of concept.
So instead of doing, say, Figma designs or whatever, you now kind of whip up a prototype in Replit. It gets the whole 3D experience of clicking through the app and interacting with it.
Yeah.
And it's such a better way of specifying product, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like going from 2-dimensional to 3-dimensional. Here's another one.
Recently, I've been playing around with Figma Make quite a bit, which has helped me put in like some of my designs just to test how usable they actually are, because in like sort of a 2D like wireframe, you don't really get the sense of how things work, even if you're following patterns, just because sometimes the use case or the need is very different. So that's been really helpful for me recently.
Yeah,
working on something that's quite complex to just understand how it works or how to actually interact with it.
It's so much, that's the prototype as specification, right? Like it's such a better way of communicating what you hope can be done, right? Yeah. We got another one.
Recently I've been using Granola a lot.
Which one?
Granola.
Granola.
It's like a note-taking tool, so you're on a call, it'll record the conversation.
Yeah.
But the thing that's really cool is it will record everything, and then if you have feasibility discussions with different teams, it'll all be in one spot, so then you can ask questions about it. So it's really helpful for getting the details right.
Yeah, cool. Like something that's funny, it kind of mildly bugs me, but it is pretty productive. is we use Gemini or whatever to record our Google Meets, and then people take the Google Meet transcription and then chuck it into Gemini and say, summarize this, and then like push it into another tool that turns it into a to-do list in some sort of Kanban board. And it's just like, it's mildly annoying because it's too good. And you're like, you young people should work harder, right? Back to organizational change, right? Yeah, cool. All right, cool. So I think in our team, like Figma has definitely been the kind of the heart of where a lot of those changes have happened. You know, they've jumped into things like Lovable, which is, you know, alternative to Replit and things like that as well. When we've been mucking around with that stuff, what we have learned is, like, we put these pods together, right? Like, you know, when you're building a whole product, you know, from scratch, you know, you want like, you know, 4 or 5 developers, maybe somebody's kind of particularly strong on front end stuff and somebody's kind of that DevOps guy or whatever. And then you have a designer and some sort of producer, like in our world, we call them product owners, but like, you know, they're kind of not really the product manager, but they're taking the startup founder on putting him on guardrails to kind of, this is how you launch a product. What we have found is like job boundaries are shifting, right? And we're like in this kind of, like we work with corporate and, yeah, we know what working with corporate looks like and feels like. We work with big and medium-sized product companies and they're much more dynamic and kind of getting on the bus. But there's still these kind of boundaries between roles and stuff like that. Where you're up at the little end and the small companies, what we're seeing is the team structure and team dynamics is changing and the job roles, the boundaries between the job roles are shifting. And so where it all goes, who knows? But like the difference between a product manager and a designer on a team has always been a place of tension, right? Yeah, and if you went to that other talk talking about product versus designers, you know, you've heard that story before, but like what it's forced the people to do in our teams is just go, cool, like what are you going to do and what am I going to do? And actually, like, instead of kind of work to abstracts, work to specifics on this project. You know what? You know construction really well, right? And I know workflow design, right? And so you focus on the domain and focus on the customer and getting them to kind of research the, you know, specifics of the, you know, price schedule thing, whatever that we're trying to fix. And I'll focus on optimizing the user experience. And yeah, and that's not a product design split, right? That's a territory in the solution split, right? And we're still working together and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, it's a time of change. And so you don't want to prematurely lock into how it's going to be. And you know, when teams have to have the roles and responsibilities conversation, it's always a little bit of a red flag because you're having that because you haven't been able to work it out with some sort of formally structured conversation. But on the other hand, if you have to have the formally structured conversation, better to have it than not, right? And so maybe you don't do it once. Maybe you kind of keep revisiting it every couple of months and just go, cool, things are changing. What do we need to do differently, right? And always anchor it around what's the job to be done, right? Like what's the customer experience we're trying to deliver here or the product outcome that we're trying to make or whatever. And just kind of revisiting how we're going to work, right? I think it's a dynamic thing. Front-end developers and full-stack developers, right? Like the designers are kind of eroding into that space. We did a bunch of experiments with some of our customers earlier in the year, and we took Lovable into their office. We set them all up with Lovable on the apps, and we did it in different configurations. So in some instances, there'd be product managers and engineers, tech leads or whatever, front-end developers and designers, and we have different combos. And when we stand back and look at them, when we judge them a few months later, because we're just running the activities and the training workshops and just getting everyone engaged in it, that was our mission, right? But then a few months later, we kind of looked at all these things that they'd done because we'd taken photos and screenshots and so forth. And we looked at them all and went, it's amazing. Like whenever we had a designer, a product designer in the workshop, the version of the product that they created was so much better through prompt engineering than through the product managers or the front end developers or whatever. And it comes to, I think the guy that was doing the keynote was talking, oh no, it was one of the other pitches for the day, the guy from Airwallex. It was like, what are the things that you're good at? Do more of that, right? What are the things that are hard for people to do but you've learned how to do well? You know, lean into that, right? And I think that's the experience that I had from looking at those experiments we were doing with the low-code apps, right? There is a, you know, and I don't know if you went to Amir's talk, you didn't do the one about like who should own product. Who, by the way, who should own design? Where should it live in the organization? All right, before we wrap up, right? But yeah, so threading back to the kind of the strategic view on value, right? And I'm going to come to strategy in a minute. So sorry if I'm kind of meandering a little bit. Are we okay with the pace? Sufficiently interesting? You're allowed to leave. It's an unconference. Got 10 minutes to go. Shit, I better pace it up. All right. Where is the strategic competitive advantage? So there's this thing about what we're doing, right? And this is where I needed the whiteboard marker. So when I ask you what the rad thing is and what you're doing that's different and innovative, right? You can think of, there's like Wardley mapping. That's a rabbit hole if you want to go down it. Has anyone heard of it? Some of the nerds. Wardley mapping is a total rabbit hole. It's all about strategy and stuff like that, but it's actually relevant and useful. A quick side note on it is like when you're designing products and experiences, you can go, cool, like in the proper model, it's got this kind of value stream thing that like Luke was talking about, but like it's basically the user experience flows. And then what's a commodity and what's not. And when you run this as a kind of a whiteboard exercise with a bunch of people, you can kind of go, all right, cool, we're spending all our time on a bunch of things that should be commodities. We should just be renting them or getting kind of open source libraries or whatever, versus like building something brand new and novel. So it's a really interesting experience. Dig into it if you want. But when I ask you about like the product that you're working on or the things that you're doing with AI or whatever, is it in the commodity space or is it in the novel space, right? Like my taking a photo of the garden and saying, what the hell am I going to do with this mess? You would think it feels like it's over there because it's a brand new thing that I couldn't have done 2 years ago, but it's there because everyone in the world has access to it right now and you don't even have to pay for it, right? So where are we going with our products, right? Tons of stuff is rapidly shifting over there in the digital world, right? And so what do you get paid for? You get paid for the value between what I can have for free and what I perceive as extra value. Right? So that's brand and position and trust and reliability and all those kind of things. What are the things that you can create that kind of sit over here that can kind of put you in a more premium position, a more bespoke position, a more defendable position from your competitors, right? Because who in the world can build a gardening app if I can take that photo, right? What about your business? Like, what are the things that can be disrupted? There are some things that are pretty resilient. Right? Like I don't think anyone's going to take out our big four banks, right? They're going to be there forever, right? But say you're Xero. Anyone here from Xero or MYOB? My favorite victims for this case study. They got good tools. They got good systems, right? I use Xero, right? It's pretty easy to use. It's handy. It's cheap. I like it. It's great value. But somebody in the next couple of years is going to create a digital bookkeeper where I can just give it access to my bank account and then just create a Google Drive or something and drop all my invoices in and figure all that sort of stuff. And I don't have to do any typing at all. It's just going to do it all for me. And what's going to happen to Xero or MYOB at that particular time, right? People are going to go really quickly, flush out of their system and go to this new competitor, right? Is your business vulnerable like that as well? Probably. Let's get a show of hands on that one. Come on. Who thinks their business is going to be vulnerable to AI disruption? Who thinks they're safe as banks? Who's undecided? Right.
Did accounting software is not already moved from the desktop versions to the cloud already, and Xero was the first one to jump on that.
Yeah.
So they're already. So it's not a question. I'm just commenting to what you're saying. So they're already sort of catching up the pace and doing what's required in the market. So I don't feel that they're going to be lagging behind at all. They'll be doing what everyone else will be doing.
They feel it. They're shitting bricks. They're absolutely terrified they're going to lose their market share to competitors like this. And so they're investing into it. They're exploring. They're running a whole bunch of experiments. There's a thing, I'm going to have to rush ahead because my time is faster than I thought it was. I thought we had 40, not 30 minutes, but there you go. There's a thing I was talking about recently at another conference, which is called 7 Powers. It's another book for the people that are nerds. That's a strategy book. And it's these 7 strategic competencies. It's a Silicon Valley thing, right? And if you're a Silicon Valley company, you've got to have 2, otherwise the investors don't want to talk to you, right? Like, what are the things that are going to give me a sustained competitive advantage? You can Google it. It's worth having a look at the image. Just do it now. Like, just go look at the Google thing, 7 Powers. The guy's name, if you need a thing, is Hamilton Helmer. And that 7 Powers book he wrote, like back in 2010 or 2012 or something, it's a framework for how strategy's been talked about and thought about out of Silicon Valley and all the companies that are influenced by Silicon Valley since then, right? And so they say you've got to have two things, right? When you look at those 7 competitive advantages, like there's process power, like super efficiency, I think that one is where ChatGPT and the like really rip away your advantage because everyone gets access to these process powers. There's cornered resources, knowledge and intellectual property in particular industry domains has been a competitive advantage for plenty of digital businesses. Again, probably getting ripped away as we speak, right? What are the things that will stick around? Maybe trust, brand power, maybe networks. So, you know, like say, like REA might be an example there, like, you know, accountants and, you know, business owners and so forth are in a network system. So they're kind of tied to each other. Real estate is an example of that. Like everyone, you know, the sellers are there, so the buyers go there, and the buyers are there, so the sellers go there and so forth. Yeah. So you got to think, like, how's your business going to be disrupted by this change, right? Out of those 7 powers, what's your business relying on at the moment? Has it got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? Which one of them are vulnerable? And as product designers, you can start to apply, I'm of the view that the whole, you know, experiment and validate thing that we do day to day as part of, you know, the DNA of how we operate is now a strategic competence, right? You know, it's been this gradual shift in this direction anyway to, you know, experiment and validate the whole business concept, not just product stuff, but the impetus to get it done is here and now, right? We need to bring UX design practices into business strategy today, right? And so that's an opportunity for all of you to level up your contribution, right? You run into challenges. You know, you're seen as the designer like 5 layers down in the org chart that works with that product team and so forth, right? Cool, whatever, right? How do you navigate that change? I don't know, but there's a job to be done there, right? You know, you can influence your peers in the organization. You can just start speaking and acting more strategically, right? Like all of these things are little steps. Like there's going to be no one big thing that changes the world, but if collectively we all pull these little steps together and go, what is the principles of user-centered design, user research, experiment, validate, all that sort of stuff. Like let's put that on the table for not just product design, but for business development as well, right? And then like we'll all level up together. And I think that's the antidote to dealing with the change. Going back to a first principle that I had in this talk is like, if I have access to do that photo thing with ChatGPT in the garden, right, that takes the competitive advantage out of anyone that had kind of domain knowledge over that before, right? And I think that applies to lots and lots and lots of businesses, right? Like more than 2/3. And so what's going to happen is everyone's going to be reaching for that new competitive frontier, right? So they'll all be competing, putting energy in, and you'll be assigned to do work, make us more competitive through doing this. And all your competitors are going to be doing exactly the same thing. So there's going to be a dynamic period where, you know, somebody gets ahead for now and then other people catch up, and it'll be a bit like the Accenture consultants kind of roaming around the banks telling everyone to do the same thing. And, you know, sometimes they adopt, and when one person changes how they operate, within 2 years, all the banks are doing the same thing. So that competitive advantage is closed. And so we'll be seeing that all over the place. But what can we do to help our businesses and our local stakeholders be more successful? And I think it's like lift those skills and put them into that strategic plane. I think my time is up. Was that useful? Cool. Do you feel motivated? Do you want to go out and change the world? Excellent. Job here is done. Thanks for coming.
Hey, Craig. That book is now almost 10 years old.
Which book?
7 Powers, yeah?
Yeah, 2012, I think.
Do you think that how did they know? And
it was a research project by a consultant looking back over more or less over the Silicon Valley performance for the previous 15, 20 years.
Yeah, cool. And do you think they still hold the 7 Powers?
I think that generally the Silicon Valley investors have believed it to be an excellent playbook up until now. And now everyone's just going, everything's changed. What do we need to do differently, right? So it's probable that some of those competitive advantages like brand power, which is essentially trust, are going to sustain, but other things will be no longer competitive advantages and new things might emerge, right? When we think about things like cornered resources, one of the strategies, like, yeah, I have something that no one else can get, right? And biggest example of that today is NVIDIA, right? They have a manufacturing capability that no one can compete with, and so they dominate that market, and so, you know, to the bank forever, right? Until a competitor turns up, and then it's not cornered anymore, and then that competitive advantage gets chipped away bit by bit. Yeah. Any other questions? No? All right. Thanks for leaving you all speechless. See you later.